Nope. You gotta hold it. Don't worry, we're gonna be out of here. Lickety split, Mark.
Yeah, we got an hour and 28 minutes to get this done. Not enough time, but we'll try. So, how's everybody doing? Not like you can answer us, unless you're in the live feed. If you're in the live feed, how you doing? If you're listening to us, I hope you're doing well. We are T-minus 9 days until Christmas. What's today? The 16th? It's my uncle's birthday.
It's my brother's birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday, Nicholas.
Happy birthday, Uncle Todd.
Okay. I was like, did you forget his name?
I was like, I thought you were saying happy birthday to my uncle. I was like, his name isn't Nicholas.
No, my brother's name is Nicholas.
Yeah.
Nick. So I gotta share a new subscriber story.
Okay.
We got a new subscriber on the podcast.
Are you talking about the text that we got?
No.
Okay.
No, my pastor was over at our house last night, and we were talking about it, and I showed him how to pull it up, because, we're not just on video, we're on audio as well. Buzzsprout, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. So shout out to Pastor Bo DeFrena and his amazing family.
Thanks, Pastor Bo.
And he shared it on his Facebook. So it's safe to say we're about to go viral and explode. So if you want to be in on the ground level and, this is the time. Strike while the iron is hot.
It's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
And who knows you.
And who knows you.
So Pastor Bo knows us, so hello, Pastor.
You said he shared it on his Facebook page?
He did.
Hey.
Yeah.
Genuinely, thank you for doing that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, he did it right there in the kitchen. It was pretty neat. Yeah.
Did he write up a post or he just share it?
He said, check out he shared the podcast link, said something like, check out this amazing podcast by my friend Josh Martin, where he shares insights into health and fitness coaching. Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Bill.
So that was a current event.
Yeah.
Second current event, the workout today, I failed to mention this. Number one, it was really cool. I like the 8-minute rest, and then 8-minute repeat again with the idea of being sustainable. But what I was not counting on was the lack of glute functionality in my jump. The very first burpee that I did to start the second 8-minute round. Like I went to jump and they were just like so tight and fatigued. I think it was just, you rest for 2 minutes, and I don't remember if I sat down or just walked around. I think I sat down a little bit, but it's like that little bit of 2-minute rest is enough to just start the process of like your muscles tightening and everything. So I'm sure things will be working real good when I get done after sitting for the podcast today.
Hopefully. That's why I wanted to stretch you guys right away after the workout. And if you were here for the workout, or if you plan on doing this workout today, or if you've already done it, make sure you guys stay moving. Keep those hamstrings moving. Get some hyper gun on it, or some foam roll, or even just a walk, or your significant other, just have them walk on your hamstrings. Get some movement in there.
I also want to identify a couple of sponsors today.
Yeah, we got a lot of them.
We have multiple sponsors. We have Exos, Exos Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine, so you can see here. That's unofficial sponsor 1. Unofficial sponsor 2 is Gangsta's Berry Dice, Killcliff. That's really what it's called. Have you ever seen that? Gangsta's Berry Dice. That's awesome.
I never thought I'd hear you say it. I'm going to add some sound effects, like some reverb to when you say that.
And then by the double Florida Gator mugs.
Nice.
Well, there's a Florida Gator Yeti and then a coffee mug.
Yep.
So unofficial sponsor, University of Florida, Killcliff, and Pure Gum, Exos,
and Muscle Milk brands. Thank you.
And Sweaty Towels.
If you're watching this live, you're going to see me chug this Muscle Milk once Josh starts rambling about something.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna get on to it certainly very soon here.
Yeah.
We'll cover some current events really quickly. Halt the banter and get right into some listener questions. A lot of content to get to today. A lot of listener questions. We got one right before class. So, current events. Excuse me. We have class schedule, or gym schedule rather. We're closed Thursday and Friday, the 24th and 25th next week. December 24th, 25th, and then the 31st of January, or 31st of December, and the 1st of January.
Yeah.
So it's the following Thursday, Friday.
Got it.
We will also be closed. Other current event is Coach Steph announced that there is a new iteration of diapers and dumbbells that starts in January. And then, let's see, the 6-week consistency challenge. That's hard. Maybe it's just post-workout, brain. But yeah, so that kicks off the 25th of January. So we got a lot going on.
And then on the 31st, we have the Alafaya Trail Run.
Oh my gosh. If there's one thing that I can ask people to come out and participate in, because it's just such a good time, it would be that. And don't give me the, I'm not ready to run, or it doesn't matter. Like, if you're not ready to have fun, you got to reevaluate your life. And that's what that is all about. It's just such a good time. Mark James is in the chat today already.
Mark James.
Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Mark is throwing shade at my Gators. Said just don't throw a shoe. I know you, Mark Z, wouldn't know what that's referring to. It was referring to the costly penalty towards the end of the game with Marco Wilson on the Gators. Played a pivotal role in the outcome of the game.
Last weekend?
Yeah, we lost to LSU. It was an upset.
You threw a shoe?
I'd rather not talk about it, so let's just leave it right there.
You just got mad?
Yeah. That reminds me of is who throws a shoe? Honestly, Austin Powers. What's the guy's name? That not Odd Job. That's from Bond. There's like the bad guy from Dr. Evil that throws the shoe. Like that's his thing.
Yeah. Oh, Will Ferrell played him.
No. That's the Fez. But there's the other guy.
Fez. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, any other current events that I'm missing?
No. I think you got all of it.
I got one more. If you missed Coach Steph's nutrition talk this past Sunday, she just emailed out a copy of that with some slides. So, definitely, if you did not get a copy of that and you're interested in it, there is a recording for it and everything. So, I would highly encourage you to reach out to any of us, and we will make sure that you get a copy of that.
Yeah, I was home when she hosted that, so I was able to tune in, and it was really good. It was a really helpful presentation. And if you guys aren't getting the emails, check your junk mail. For some reason, for a little bit, mine were going to, or her emails were going to my junk mail, and I just had to set it to go to my inbox. And now, I got that presentation email right to my inbox, so that was pretty helpful. So if you're not getting anything when we mention these emails, just check your junk mail. It should be in there. It should be pretty.
It is not junk.
No, it's not junk.
All right, so let's go to listener questions. I'm actually going to go in reverse because it's the most recent one on my mind, and it was the most recent question that we got. So the first one is basically surrounding drinking coffee. Is drinking coffee before coming in to work out a bad thing?
Okay. So
this was asked right before the 9 a.m. session kicked off this morning. Had somebody come in, and Zach came in and asked, "Hey, I got a question for you. What about drinking coffee? How is that?" Do you have any thoughts, Mark? Because you've kind of been on the coffee train, off the coffee train.
I got the coach's answer. I got the politician's answer, and it depends. I would say generally, and you'll probably provide some crazy physiological answer, but it really depends on the person and how coffee really reacts with you. If it's really going to be the catalyst for bowel movements during your session, and it's going to affect your session, it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's such a legit consideration. I love that. So I think that's number one.
But if it's just part of your routine and it's something you like, caffeine is actually something. If you drink caffeinated coffee, it's something we covered in school as an ergogenic aid, and so it can actually play a part in performance. Very minuscule, but it can play a part because it's giving you energy, it's energizing you, and so. But I would say for the most part, I wouldn't call it a bad thing unless it's a bad thing for you.
Yeah.
But that's my answer. I imagine you have a much more robust answer, like robust coffee.
That's right. So this would probably be when you want to kick off that muscle milk chug because I'm going to go for it here. But so the first thing that I would ask you, specifically speaking to Zach, but anybody that drinks coffee and is wondering or had this question, the first thing that you should ask yourself is why am I drinking it? And like, what is my intention? Is it I'm doing it because if not, I feel like my brain is in a fog when I wake up, or because I don't feel like I've got the energy I need to get going in the morning, or because I've been drinking it for so long, if I don't drink it, then I've got headaches. All of these are important things to know about yourself because it gives insight into why you're doing something. And I would say that if you answered, oh yeah, that's why I drink it, to any of those, then really the next consideration is to look at your lifestyle. Because what you're essentially saying is that like coffee is acting like the duct tape to some poor lifestyle decisions.
Right.
Right? So, because you don't always want to have to rely on coffee or have this crutch that like, oh, I can't get, everyone knows that person, like, oh, I can't get going, like, I can't function as a human being until I have my coffee. Don't be that person. Personally, like, I love coffee. I love it for the taste, but if I don't have it, the disruption for me is just, it's a part of my routine, but it's not, oh, I don't have the energy, or oh, I can't think clearly, or anything like that. So, yeah, I would first ask, what's the intention? So if the intention is not one of those, and it's the reason that you're drinking coffee, and you're asking this question, and again, I'm just making some assumptions, but building off of what you said is, does it have some sort of negative effect? You know, if you drink it 20 minutes before you come in, and then 20 minutes into the session, you got to make a run to the little boy's room or the little girl's room, that's just probably not ideal, right? Now, if you're drinking it because, like you said, you've heard it's a performance enhancer, or the more professional term, ergogenic aid, then you need to probably ask some deeper questions like, is coffee really the thing that I need to be concerned about in terms of like increasing my performance? To me, that's like if you think of all the different things you could do in the form of a big triangle, like that would be like one of the top 2 to 3 sprinkles on the very, whole thing. Whereas the foundational pieces would be your sleep, your nutrition, your movement quality, your stress management, these things we talk about. So if you're using it for that reason, and you're not at the pinnacle of athleticism, because like you said, it's a minuscule, it's percentage points, like 0.1% increase for performance.
Right.
The people who care about that are the best of the best of the best, who get paid millions upon millions of dollars to play sport for their profession.
Yeah. So
those are the people that should be asking the performance-oriented question around something like caffeine. Now, as a stimulant to kind of like, wake the body up, that's really what happens, is it's got this excitatory function within the body. It just, for lack of a better way to describe it, it kind of like turns everything on, right? Like everything is felt a little bit more acutely. So it's not a bad thing if it doesn't affect you negatively and you are clear on what your intentions are. But don't just take it at face value that like, oh, it's going to improve my performance. Let me tell you, most of the people who think that, you're thinking at step 99, when like, let's just go back to simple lifestyle things, like the basics, because that's actually what works.
Thinking about our population and knowing our population, I would imagine that a majority of them, I would probably say all of them, aren't considering it as a performance enhancer, but I know that like our population is they wake up and they either come and work out immediately, whether it be 5:30 or 9, and then they'll go to work or continue with their day or go take care of the kids or whatever. Like it's something they'll use as that stimulant that you mentioned to wake the body up and kind of get through their day. Or really not get through their day, but maybe, if they're drinking 3 or 4 cups a day, shout out to Pansy. I know she drinks like 2 or 3 cups a day. But like they'll use it as just, okay, like here's my wake up. And you mentioned at the start of your answer that requires some sort of lifestyle factor considerations. Like you should probably reflect on that if it's something that you absolutely, positively need in order to function.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's not the thing, that you want to do long term. It's like, well, I have to get up so early. It's like, you need to ask yourself some hard questions, Maybe go to bed a little bit earlier. Maybe decrease the temperature in your room. Maybe don't be on your phone, up until the minute that you close your eyes to go to bed. Maybe block out all the ambient light in your room. Instead of, I'm going to continue to do all those things and forget you, and then I'm going to just pound coffee all day and wonder why things just are staying the same.
And not to go down the coffee rabbit hole, but that is just, you're kind of detailing a domino effect that happens when you're not taking into account all the other lifestyle factors that can affect sleep, because you get poor sleep, and then, like you said, you're pounding coffee, and what that can lead to as well is dehydration, because you're not getting as much water now, and there has to be a good ratio. But what is it? It's like you should drink 1.5 times the amount of ounces of water that you do coffee. So if you're drinking 12 ounces of coffee, you should now have an extra 18 ounces of water, which I've said on here is a good reason why I don't drink coffee, is because I have enough water to drink.
And that's in addition to the water you should already be drinking, which is half your body weight in ounces.
Right. So, I'm taller, I'm larger, I already should be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day, throwing on 118, and then working out, there's an extra 16 ounces, right? That's well over a gallon, closer to a gallon and a quarter of water a day, which is, not to sound like a baby, but it's a difficult thing to do. That's a lot of water. Right? So that's kind of the domino effect of relying on coffee as I need to get through the day. I've spoken to people before that have worked out early in the morning, and then when they've slept in, right, so they're actually getting more sleep, but they will wake up with a headache, similar to a hangover, because they're used to waking up at a certain time and having their coffee. And now if they wake up 2 or 3 hours late, their body's not receiving that stimulus, and now they're going through caffeine withdrawals, having coffee 2 to 3 hours late. It's like, listen, you got 8 hours of sleep instead of 6 or 7, but you woke up with a headache because you're relying on coffee. That isn't normal. Yeah,
that's like the check engine light on your car. It's like, oh, something's wrong. But it also speaks to the importance of a daily rhythm, what could be described as a daily rhythm practice. And I know that sounds kind of frou-frou, but just hear me out. It's like, okay, your body has been conditioned that I go to bed at 11, I wake up at 5, I have my coffee at 5:15, and there's this rhythm, and let's just call it, for the sake of this story, an unhealthy rhythm, but it becomes normalized for your body, right? This unhealthy, stressful type rhythm. And then all of a sudden you actually start to skew into more of a healthy pattern where you're getting adequate sleep, but because your body is so conditioned to this, what it's calling normal but unhealthy rhythm of I get up, I've underslept, then I caffeinate to duct tape this poor lifestyle choice or whatever. It speaks to the ability of your body's adaptability to these unhealthy behaviors. What I like, the way that I look at it though as a coach, is I've just discovered an opportunity to talk to you about, hey look, if we can establish a new rhythm, a new routine to where you get your sleep, and maybe you still wake up and drink coffee because you like it,
right,
but it's not duct tape for a poor lifestyle choice. There's a difference. And I don't want this to be like, oh my gosh, he's hypocritical. We know that he drinks a lot of coffee, but now he's passionate. No, I love coffee. I love it for the taste of it. It does nothing for me from a stimulant perspective. And I think this is sometimes a problem that people will get into. It's kind of like any drug, where if you're doing it for the stimulant properties, let's say the first time you have it, 4 ounces is enough to get you woken up. Well, guess what? Over time, you get no effect, so you have to take more, and then you adapt, and then you have to take more. And before you know it, you're drinking 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee in the morning just to get that same effect, because the intention of why you are doing it.
Right. And I kind of just want to be clear, we're not bashing coffee.
No, I love coffee. Like legit. Like I came in here and this was, my coffee that I was finishing when we met this morning. So it's delicious. If you want to buy me coffee for a Christmas gift, for instance, I love it, and I'll send you a video of me drinking it on my front porch, just rocking back and forth in our chairs. It's delicious and tasty.
Did you put it on your wish list?
No, I did not.
Did you edit your wish list?
I did yesterday, actually. Yeah. Yeah. But there's some good comments. My mom said this, and you covered it, the dehydrating piece. And then, Mark James, you're exactly right. If you have caffeine later in the day, especially if you're a person that works out at say the 5 or 7 o'clock classes in the evening, definitely don't have coffee before you come in. It's just going to get your system too riled up, and you may think you're sleeping okay, but I promise you that you're sacrificing some quality. So I think right now, the most common thing that I've seen is any caffeine after 2 p.m., assuming you're going to bed 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, has disruptive qualities of your sleep. So you think about like the half-life of coffee and things like that. So
I always bring up the funny episode of Seinfeld where George and Jerry, I think they go to the diner and it's like lunchtime, it's like noon, and Jerry's like, "You want a cup of coffee?" And George's like, "No, I can't. It'll keep me up." You're like, "It's 12 o'clock." Like it's like, "No, it'll keep me up." Yeah.
Yeah, Mark James Black Rifle Coffee. They make some good ones. They've got a couple of different flavors that are really good.
I've never tried it, but I've heard it's really good.
It is. It's very delicious and tasty.
So that's the note I kind of wanted to end on with that, as we'll end on a happy note. What is Josh Martin's, what's your go-to coffee? Like, what's your favorite?
I really like Buddy Brew coffee, actually. Not Buddy Brew at their store down in like the, South Tampa area.
Yeah.
I actually think their drip coffee there is overcooked. It tastes really burnt, over roasted, all the things that you don't do with coffee. But if you get their beans, bring them home, grind them, and brew it yourself, it's really good, smooth coffee. So that's like one of my top 3 favorites. Another one, I've got a gym owner that I worked with up in the Ohio area. Tim and Steph have actually dropped in a couple times up there. They've got a really good Christmas blend that they do.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty good. And then there's another one that we got in Canada from our friends at Two Brain years ago that came fresh bean. I don't remember what the name of it, but that was like, those are my top 3 kind of favorites.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're not on coffee, so it doesn't matter what you think.
I don't know too much about it. So.
But for daily consumption, actually my favorite is Dunkin' Donuts. So I've got Dunkin' Donuts coffee at home. Yeah,
I'd say daily consumption is, I think we do like we have a Keurig machine, and so we have the K-Cups, and one that's actually really good, like decent coffee. I say that, but you'd probably think it's swill. Yeah, but it's I think it's Newman's own. They do make good coffee. Yeah. I think that's the one we're still using. Yeah. But I like Dunkin's pretty good. I've had it a couple times. And then I actually really like, typically, I know you think Starbucks is a little bit over roasted. Charbucks, yes, yeah. Correct. But I like their Nitro Cold Brew. I think it's pretty decent. Yeah. So, but you could listen to last week's episode and know, like, I have a cup of any kind of coffee. Then you're all over the place. Yeah. Cool. All right. So that was 1 down. We got like 7 to go. Yes, sir. So let's go to question A, which would be number 2 here. So we're going to combine letters and numbers. Okay. New Year's resolutions. Did Mark and Josh have any for 2020? If so, how'd they go? And do we have any New Year's resolutions for 2021? So this is a cheat question because I was in Stephanie's nutrition presentation. Oh, okay. And so she asked this, and I think she wanted to get this out of me on the show. Unless she just genuinely wanted to know. But I wanted to, personally I had one for 2020, and it was I wanted to read 10 books. But I think I've had that one since like 2018 or like 2017. So yeah. When you borrowed one of my books for like 8 months. Yeah, right. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm going to put this on Do Not Disturb. So it didn't go well. I read, I think, 4, which is good, but the 4 has been in the last like 7 or 8 weeks. Oh, so that's just okay. Like, using that math, like that's enough to. I think it's like 24 or 25 books a year. That you could have read at that clip. Right, exactly. But no, I didn't get to do that, and it's because, and Stephanie covered this really well in her presentation, so I'm not going to steal her thunder, it's like, how many books did I read the year before? It was maybe like 1 or 2.
Right.
So why would I increase it, over
600%.
Yeah, right? 600 to 1,000%. So that was my one for 2020. I don't have any for 2021, partly because I haven't thought about it. Like, I haven't really considered, I just try to, it sounds so like corny and canned, but just try to be better every day, week, month, year. So I guess that's kind of for 2021, is just focus on being better.
Yeah.
That sounds really corny, but that was my 2020 and 2021 resolutions.
So I don't have any set for 2021 because that's usually, I've got a couple of days that I book in towards the very end of the year in December where I look back at everything that took place in that year and then evaluate, okay, how did I do in the areas that I wanted to improve in? And then it's so funny, we talked about adherence and efficacy is a couple weeks back. I look and say, okay, well, if I didn't do well, was I actually following the plan that I had put into place, like doing the thing, right? Because otherwise, how do you evaluate, like, do I need to change my plan? Did the plan not work? So I go back and I look at that, and then I base, like, the new resolutions off of that. So I honestly don't recall exactly what I wrote down for 2020. And I didn't look back into my notes before we started this. Now, I do know in general what a couple of them were, and one of them was related to what you said is last year I deliberately read a lot of books. I got into a really good rhythm. I was getting some really quick, easy reads, and so my resolution for 2020 was actually to read less, but to apply things a lot more and kind of dive a little bit deeper in. So I've read less books this year, so I have completed that one. But I've read at a much deeper pace. And what it's actually done is allowed me to reflect and, to talk about what I've learned and share it with people and recommend, the right book to the right person at the right time. So I do find immense value in that. So that has gone well. A second one that I had was simply to increase my consistency in working out from a week-to-week basis. So I had a period, I think we talked about this, prior, I don't know when, maybe it was earlier this year, but where, my consistency in just showing up and working out had fallen off, where I was averaging like 1 or 2 times a week for a long time. So one of my resolutions was to get back to at least, 3, but hopefully 4 sessions a week, throughout all of 2020. And even through all of COVID, I'm still able to do that. So nice. I met that one. Now, for some other specific ones, I really don't remember. And I think that's just like, that's just a symptom of 2020. It's a symptom of not writing them down and seeing them very clearly written out every day. But I do look forward to having my space of a couple of days, like I talked about towards the end of the month, to reflect back on the year and then look ahead to what I want to accomplish in the new year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So you'll update us on that after you write it?
I will, yeah. So we'll probably do that sometime, but we should make a note of that, like maybe the first podcast in the new year, talk about, what's on the horizon personally, professionally, if people care to hear about that. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. We'll make a plan for that.
Yep.
All right, so next question. Which one did you want to do next? Because I know we're going a little out of order.
You surprised me, Mark.
Surprised me. Let's go to D. I think D would be a good one. Are you looking at the outline? I want to say B for last because I think it's most applicable and it's going to be kind of the longest rant.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do D. So number 3. I have bulging discs and herniated discs in my low back. What would you advise me as your athlete/client? My pain level on days 1 to 2 of the flare-up was about a 7 or 8 out of 10, but then a 9 on day 3. And now, a couple of days later, no traditional exercise outside of walking, house chores, and constantly lifting my baby. I'm at a dull ache with some sharp pain randomly of about a 4 or a 5 out of 10. So lots to unpack there. Basically, bulging disc, herniated disc. At the start, it was a 7 and a 9 out of 10. Now it's about a 4 or 5 out of 10. What would you advise me as the client?
So what I like about that is there is just in the language that she uses, because I know who wrote this, and I don't know if she wanted, her name mentioned publicly, but so we'll just leave it as an anonymous unless I see her pop in and say, hey, we could talk about this openly. But what I know about this person is obviously female. I know that she has an extensive training age. You can also tell by the language that she uses that there is an immense amount of self-awareness in terms of language that she uses to describe pain. Also being very cognizant of, okay, days 1 and 2 when my back flared up, my pain was here. It actually got worse by the time day 3 rolled around. So some really, big inflammation showed up on day 3 when pain went to a 9. So that's actually, to me, a good sign, because it says that the body is really trying to basically work in overdrive to repair itself. And then, it obviously almost the pain went down. Let's see. And then day 3, now at day 5, no traditional exercise. Dull ache with some sharp pain randomly, so about a 4 to 5 out of 10. So that's actually still a lot. The other thing that I want to point out is she says no traditional exercise outside of walking, chores, and then constantly lifting, little things around the house. That's actually what we refer to behind the scenes as coaches as like unstructured movement. So structured movement would be you come in, you squat, you press, you push, you run, all those, the traditional gym exercises, right? You're going to deadlift, you're going to push press, you're going to box jump. That's structured movement in the context of go to a gym to exercise. And what a lot of people fail to realize or don't appreciate or maybe don't understand, but that COVID revealed, is that there's a lot that you can do in terms of unstructured movement to actually still progress towards your goals when you can't do what we have wrapped inside of our head of as traditional exercise. So when she's talking about walking, house chores, that's great. So what would I advise as her coach? Number 1 is, for that level of pain, and I know that she did, but I would go see a professional in terms of, what I mean by that is, I'm a professional as a coach, but there's a scope of practice that I have to stay within. So when that, in this area, it definitely does exceed my scope of practice, I'm going to refer you to a medical professional, so a physical therapist, chiropractor, something like that. Now, when she is released and okayed back to me as a fitness coach, there's a collaborative effort that needs to go on between fitness coach, physical therapist, fitness coach, chiropractor. And we're going to talk in terms of, okay, what movement patterns should we avoid? Like, what are contraindicated is the term that we would use. So, in this case, I know bulging disc, herniated discs in the low back. I know that deadlifts give this person pain. So I'm not going to do anything where there is a significant amount of hip flexion. So I'm not going to deadlift. I'm not going to row. I'm not going to box jump. I'm not going to burpee. I'm going to keep away from a lot of compound lifts. And I'm going to have her do things like what we call locomotion, but walking. I have her walk, for a length of time, let's just say 30 minutes. Can you walk for 30 minutes and it be pain-free during and post-activity? So an hour after you've been or you've gotten back from your walk, are you still pain-free? Okay, cool. Next time you go for a walk, the next day maybe you go for 35 minutes. And then same thing, 40, and then 45, and then 60 or whatever. So I would say that. I would also say that to the extent that it's possible, minimize the time that you spend in a static, fixed, flexed hip position, i.e. sitting. Try to sit as little as possible. So get yourself a standing desk, walk as much as you can, as long as, again, that kind of stuff is pain-free. From an exercise standpoint, what you can do is work on some isolation type movements. So we think of this as like traditional bodybuilding. You could do some bicep curls, you could do some front raises, you could do some dumbbell bench press. We also want to pay really careful attention to making sure that we do address the front side of the hips, because we do know that being in that flexed hip position or having an overextended lumbar spine can contribute or exacerbate the type of pain that she's feeling. So I would want to know from my medical professional, what is the plan to continue that rehab process? So things like hip bridges, glute bridges, clamshells, these are all things that, again, I want to sit down, what are you capable of doing? And this is where assessment comes in. It's so important that when somebody's working their way back from something, we as coaches have a baseline assessment that we want to do with everybody. So I would put her through the assessment to say, okay, let's wipe out, what you were capable of doing pre-injury, and let's start from square one again. And that's a tough conversation to have.
Right.
Because I know who this person is and what they were capable of. To have the conversation now to say, okay, you need to put that out of your mind, and what are you capable of today? Assess where that is, and then say, okay, your training program is now just beyond what you showed me in the assessment. And then we would start from there.
It's kind of just rebuilding back up to where they were until they were pain-free.
Yeah. And the other part that goes into this assessment is, it's interesting she uses this terminology, athlete/client, is pre-injury. Say, let's just go back 2 years ago. There is that mindset of the athlete, I'm doing it for an athletic pursuit, right? Like that's the highest intention that I have. Knowing who this is now, things have changed dramatically the past 2 years. So I would want to know, what is the goal? What is your intention today? And that's an important distinction, athlete or client or member. Because we talked about this weeks ago on the podcast, the athletic pursuit, performance, sport is, points, pain, prizes, podium.
Ooh.
Now it might be, I want to be able to do chores at my house with my family and be able to bend down and tie my shoes without saying, hold on, my back gave out again, and I'm in my early 30s, like, that ain't living.
Yeah.
So that's part of the assessment too, is, okay, let's wipe the slate clean, see where you're at today, what are your intentions, what are your deepest desires, and I know that sounds like, kind of woo-woo, but that's where the conversation needs to go.
It takes a lot of thought. And it's hard I wasn't an athlete growing up, right? That's hard for me to do, is answer those questions. I can't imagine how hard it is for someone that was still is a fantastic athlete, that's gone through something like this, no matter the age, so let alone this person, right, to do that, just being an athlete in general and answer a question that's difficult like that. Because I think we all want to go like, man, I still want to be competitive in fitness. I still want to be able to, play Thanksgiving football with my friends, or I still want to be able to weightlift or whatever it might be. But right now, like, priority is, hey, let's get rid of pain. And then let's stay that way for a really long time. And then we'll think about getting back into it.
Yeah, you have to remember, we talked about this before, is, there's that difference of like pain, discomfort, injury, all those things. So pain is a good thing. It's the check engine light of the body that like, oh, hold on, something's not quite right. You don't just like pull the fuse and ignore it, right, and duct tape it with mobility or voodoo floss band and some lacrosse ball, and then I just jump right into it and I, go through the pain or no pain, no gain, and all those stupid axioms that people have out there. It's no. Like, this is real. We need to address it and make sure that I'm looking at, I know you're in early 30s. How can we progress this thing for another 40 years, 50 years?
Yeah.
Like, I want you to, the things that you want to be able to do today, I want you to be able to do them into your 80s. What's the plan to get there?
Yeah.
It starts the conversation.
Thank you for that question.
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Cool.
So we'll go to number C.
I like this. Number C.
There we go. Number C.
Letter 3, number C.
Let me write down this timestamp that we got here. Okay, so we are on, this is actually number 4 for the show today. It is how do you identify stress, or how to identify stress. How do you tell the difference between good and bad stress, and how do you set up roadblocks to avoid stress? I'm going to add on another question of my own. What kind of roadblocks could those be? And then this is kind of the 5th part of the question now is, what are some health problems brought on by stress? So we're talking about stress.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about it quite a bit. So let's start the very basics, the very first question. How do you identify stress? Or really, I guess a good question is, what is stress first? And then how do you identify it?
Yeah, so stress in a nutshell is anything that takes your body out of homeostasis. Here's a non-fancy sounding way to describe that is any situation that kind of pulls you out of the normal, like to an extent. Working out is a stress. Eating is a stress. Having hard conversations is a stressor. So there is some physiological things, if you've ever been driving down the road at nighttime and you see a deer on the side of the road and you think for a split second they're about to dart in front of your car, and that surge of adrenaline, like that is an immediate acute stress response.
It literally happened to me last weekend. So it's funny, it was on the other side of the road, but I didn't see it. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you feel like all the way to your fingertips. It's pretty remarkable, like what the body is capable of. But it goes away so quick. But sometimes the heart rate, elevating sticks with you for a while, but that's another indicator. So how to identify stress is just things like that is recognizing. But there's another amazing thing about the body, and we talked about it earlier, is being adaptable. So I shared that story of I go to bed late, I wake up early, I start with coffee, and you might view that as normal, but your body internally is actually dealing with chronic stress. So then there comes that period of acute stress, the deer in the road, or chronic stress. I go to bed late, I wake up early, I use coffee to get me going. So that would be a chronic stress. Another chronic stress is I keep coming in and every time I deadlift, my low back hurts, or every time I do this, my low back hurts, chronically, and then one day you bend over and tie your shoes and your back blows out and you find out you've got, things going on.
Right.
It wasn't the shoe tying, it was all the other repeated stressors that eventually led to that, right? So I hope that kind of answers how I identify stress.
The easy answer is stress is everything, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's just about everything.
Yeah. The one thing that I would categorize as not stressful, and we talked about this a couple of episodes ago too, is the only time that your body is truly repairing itself is in sleep.
Right.
So I would say that's time when you're not stressed.
That's true homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always see these movies where like I know we've been referencing Austin Powers a lot and joking a lot of Austin Powers, but they're frozen, right? So he was frozen in time, and like he wakes up and he's sleepy, It's like there are all these movies where they're putting someone to sleep and sending them out in space or something. These alien, put in this tube and they're put to sleep because it's the best state for the body to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, if ever, and maybe I don't know categorically that we can say that there is a no stress state, but I can say definitively that it would be the lowest stress state. Well, so maybe that's the best way to language that.
And not that I'm using science fiction movies to coach you guys, but that's...
Well, we're using science fiction. This is all a big joke here, guys. Big smoke screen.
So, how do you tell the difference between good stress and bad stress? Or, if we're going to use the scientific terms, eustress, EU stress, or distress,
yes,
DI stress.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's exactly what was in my notes about this, is that there is a difference. Eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, is what we would classify as good stress. Distress is what, colloquially, is that the right word? Colloquially? Yeah.
I think so. I hope so, man.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
That was a good word. Yeah, put that in there. Josh pronounces a new long word. But that is what collectively people in society, just when they say, oh, I'm stressed out, like, nobody says that in the eustress sense. It's always in the distress. So usually when people are saying they're stressed out, or this is stressful, or I don't need to take on any more stress, they're referencing the distress. But there is good stress. So I did look this up because I do think it is helpful to characterize both of them. So eustress is something that can motivate you and focus your energy. It's usually short term. It is perceived to be within our coping abilities. So it's something that happens, but I can take this on and I feel good about it. Mm-hmm. It feels exciting, and it can improve performance.
What are some examples?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
So characteristics of distress, where negative stress causes anxiety or concern, which is pretty much like everything for people, can be short or long term. It is perceived as something that is out of our ability to cope, feels unpleasant, it decreases performance, and it can lead to mental and physical problems. So even in those characteristics, it is tough to think of objective examples of each. So I've got some. So negative personal stressors could be the death of a spouse or a loved one, divorce, losing contact with loved ones, hospitalization, injury or illness, being abused, separation, conflict in interpersonal relationships, money issues, unemployment, sleep, your inability to go shopping in normal world these days, right? That is distress. That is negative personal stressors. Positive personal stressors, receiving a promotion or a raise at work, starting a new job, marriage, buying a home, having a child, moving, taking a vacation, holiday seasons. Like, this is why all of a sudden people get a little bit more cheery around Thanksgiving and Christmas time. It's just, things are new and fresh and people are smiling more.
Right.
Retirement, taking educational classes or learning a new hobby. So those are the examples of eustress, good stress.
So to answer the question, how do you tell the difference? Basically, if it's causing you any sort of strife, it's bad.
Yeah.
And if it's an event that happened to you and it's really not causing strife, or it's making you happy, it's good.
Yep.
Cool.
So I just want to throw this interesting little nugget in here. So we talk about nutrition a lot because it's one of our 4 pillars, right? Sleep, eat, move, manage. And this is, I think, deep down why the conversation that we had on Thanksgiving was so important, and why food, it can be simultaneously both good and bad, right? So, I think everybody, unless you're a complete moron, would agree that McDonald's is not the healthiest choice that you can make when it comes to, just from a nutrient density standpoint.
Okay.
Or going back to the Thanksgiving thing, is what we described as stuffing ourselves with all this food.
Oh, yeah.
But the experience surrounding that, being with loved ones, laughing, telling stories, all of the things that happen within that quote-unquote stressful thing of eating that food, could also be categorized as a eustress, because you do get some positive physiological, things from it. Where it goes wrong for people, though, is where they eat the foods that we could describe as, from a nutrient standpoint, poor choice, and then they feel guilty for doing it. So then you take away any sort of positive eustress that you would have gotten from it, and now everything surrounding that experience is a distress.
How do you change that if you're one of those people?
Intention and being very self-aware.
So mindset.
So when I have a slice of every single pie that was offered to me at my mom's for Thanksgiving, there is zero guilt or shame felt or anything whatsoever. But it's also a recognition that, I'm not doing this every day. The kids are there. We're having a good time. It's just all that is wrapped up in it. And I'm very clear, very aware of what my intentions are with these things.
Right.
Yeah. I just thought that was an interesting. It just popped into my head real time as we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, how do you set up or how to set up roadblocks to avoid stress? And I'm just going to assume we're talking about bad stress, because if you don't want to set up the roadblocks for the good stress, unless you just don't want good things to happen to you.
You really want to roadblock the bad stuff to open the road for good stuff.
Right. And so I'll kind of go ahead and just say, maybe that bad stuff could be good stuff with a shift in mindset. So maybe a roadblock you're setting up is really not a roadblock, but you're kind of just, to stick with the road analogy, you're just taking a different route to get there. So you're just taking a different path. But I'll ask you now is, what are some roadblocks that you can set up to avoid this bad stress?
I think the first one, and I go back to, I keep referencing prior episodes, but there was one where we talked about the pillar of management, what we call stress management for the SEM model. And the very first block in our theoretical hierarchy for that is taking time to reflect on, think about, and determine what your priorities and values are. Making sure that you're very clear on that, because that paves the way for you to say no to things that are potentially negatively impacting. Now, notice that pillar is not called stress removal, because that's really not what life is all about. You are going to deal with stressors, but the stresses that you can manage in roadblock, you can only do so if you're clear on what you actually want for your life, for yourself, for your family, things like that. So that has to be the first step, because then what it does is it allows you to say no, or to avoid, hopefully, the things that are going to be negative stressors. From the context of health and fitness, because that's what we're talking about here, I know this is going to sound so redundant because we say it multiple times every podcast episode, but is talk to your coach. So if you feel like, going back to one of the other questions, that, man, every time I do X, Y, Z, my back flares up, but you keep doing X, Y, Z, how about we remove that roadblock and you just don't deadlift? What if you never, ever deadlifted again? What would happen? You'd probably feel a lot better. So let's just not ever do that. And I know that that's such a definitive black and white statement. And in my mind as a coach, I'm looking at maybe 30 years from now, I could trick her into doing something, like that. But for now, to help you get past that, is we say, okay, we're never going to go back to that point, because that is a roadblock and that is causing you stress, And it's not enough to just remove the load or go with an empty bar, because that, and I know every time I deadlift, you're still doing the movement, and you're in your head, you're still telling your mind that I'm doing this thing that I know I have gotten hurt doing multiple times before.
Right.
So even if it's no load, But the best form and the best tempo, the body is still like on edge waiting, and that's stressful.
Yeah.
So, to kind of recap, it's like, take time to discover what your personal values and priorities are, because that sets the stage for what you're going to start looking at. That's like, oh man, this relationship is always causing me stress. And every time I get a text message from this person, every time I go to this place and I see this person, it causes me stress. So then, I go back to my priorities and values. I don't want to be around negative, complaining people. So I remove that relationship. And again, that's a difficult conversation. But, that's a way to manage it and to put up a little roadblock.
And momentarily, that could be a little bit of distress as well as, having that conversation with yourself, and potentially if it gets to the point having a conversation with those people. But in the long run, you're basically investing a little bit of distress for an absence of it for a long, long time.
Long time eustress, yeah.
Yeah.
And it also frees you up, the whole priorities and values thing. It frees you up to say no. Because when you say yes to something, whatever it is, when I say yes to record this podcast, I'm saying no to doing anything else during this time.
Right.
But I love doing this. Versus if I said no to this and yes to something else, I'm like, well, man, I really wish I would have done the podcast.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know what my priorities and values were, and talking to you and to the members and to the community at large, then I wouldn't be as equipped as I possibly could to say no to the wrong things, or to even the good things, because you may be saying no to really good things so that you can say yes to the truly great things. And that's a really hard lesson that I am still learning to this day, because I'm presented, probably like you, with so many great opportunities that I have to turn down so that I can say yes to the utterly amazing ones.
Right.
But you don't know what's the best until you take time to determine your priorities and values.
So last part is, and we can just rattle these off unless you want to get into them, but I know we also have a last question that will probably be a meaty one, is what are some health problems brought on by stress?
I think maybe the more appropriate question is, what are some health problems not brought on by stress?
Right.
Honestly, so if you, and we're going to go back to that early, situation where I'm going to bed late, I'm waking up early, I'm, getting going with my coffee, my IV drip coffee, and so we're saying that like that is stressful on the body, right? So that's a chronic stress, and you're eventually going to break somehow, some way. Now, what precisely? Could be cardiovascular disease, it could be a stroke, it could be an injury, it could be, I don't know if I would classify this as like a health problem, but when you live a life that is pro-inflammatory, i.e. highly stressed, whether chronic or acute, your mobility lessens.
What?
So if I'm that person that goes to bed late, wakes up early, gets the caffeine drip going, that will play a contributing factor to your insert mobility issue here. My hips, my knees, my ankles, my T-spine, my thoracic spine, like it's inflammation, and I'm famous for saying stress is stress is stress, right? Now how it manifests is different per person, but that could be a thing. So instead of, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do my 25-minute ROMWOD routine, maybe I reduce the inflammation in my body by managing my lifestyle a little bit better.
Right. It adds a literal aspect to the phrase weight of the world on your shoulders. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, because you can, if you're stressed, like, and then all of a sudden, like, man, I've just been so stressed. Like, it's happened to me a few months ago. I was like stressed about something long time ago, like 8 to 10 months ago. I had to go somewhere I didn't want to go, and I was so stressed I got a headache. Like, so it's like your shoulders tighten up.
Yeah, you feel that it's like I say my traps are in my ear.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you get a headache from it because like your whole head, neck area is so tense. And then it's over, or the event's over, or you don't have to deal with it anymore. And it's like, man, I feel like this monkey's off my back, or whatever it is. Like, for some people it might be debt, like you mentioned, financial problems. Like, man, get that monkey off your back with debt. I think they actually have a commercial out about that now or something. But it's, that's literally, that is stress. That is a huge analogy and metaphor for stress, is that monkey on your back.
So I got a funny story. One of my favorite books about stress, actually my favorite book about stress, is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
It's on my wish list.
And I know I didn't get you, but I would have definitely bought that for you. If you don't get it, I'll buy it for you. But anyways, so in that book, and this is, it hit home for me, and you'll see why in just a second, and everyone will laugh at me. But in the book, they talk about what can happen suddenly in the body from a big stressor in your life. So you've heard of sudden cardiac arrest, right? It's like you get some news and holy crap, you have a heart attack. I mean, that's serious business. You know what else can happen? Almost overnight is the graying of hair.
Really?
Yeah. I was flabbergasted because I'd always heard about that, but Sapolsky goes into some of the research about that, and it's not like you're gonna, have hair like yours, and then you're gonna be like white as this cow or gray as this cow, overnight. But it's like that can, yes, overnight change the makeup of the hair.
Wow.
And I was just fascinated by that, So that's another. And I guess really I joked about it when you first asked this question: is what health problem is not brought on by stress? It's hard to say that there is a causation effect that like, oh, I'm stressed, I get this thing. What it really boils down to more is like the correlation, the relationship between all these factors. It's like stress is always within pretty much all the things that happen negatively from a health and wellness perspective to somebody. With the exception, we talked about this in the podcast about genetics, with the exception you're born with a genetic mutation or something that, is uncontrollable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that guy that wrote the book, it's Sapolsky?
Robert Sapolsky.
He also wrote a book called Behave that was just published a few years ago.
I have it, yeah.
Is it good?
It's amazing.
Because when I was, and this is kind of trying to tie it all into, the decisions you make and reevaluating your mindset and your values. Is like this book, I just read the blurb, it's kind of about the decisions that humans make. And I didn't know he wrote that book until I was researching Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and I saw that he had wrote that book, and I was like super into neurology and and people and like the decisions they make and why. And I saw he wrote that, and I'm like, that's going on my wish list. Like, that looks incredible too.
You want to read Zebras first and then Behave.
Okay.
But the premise of Behave, and that was one of my reads this year actually. The premise of that one is, I think the tagline is like the biology of humans that are best and worst, but what they talk about in the book is what happens in the microsecond before you take an action or a behavior, right? What happens 2 seconds, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 2 parents that all lead up to that behavior.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
He's been doing this research and this work for 40, 50 years, however long he's been doing it, but it's been decades. So there is no better authority on the stress piece than that man.
So those are two. Would you recommend those books to people? Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers and Behave.
I would recommend Zebras, but you have to be aware that it's a pretty dense book. Zebras took me almost a full year to get through and absorb.
Wow.
if I would have read that in college, that would have been, I mean, it's a textbook level of thought and processing, not from a thickness standpoint, just from a density of the thought, the research, everything that goes into it is just really, really well done. And if you do it right, you sit back and think about all these different things, and I know it's going to tie into this last question we're going to kind of try to end on here. It's pretty remarkable, and it has been a catalyst for so many things that I've changed within my beliefs on, life and fitness and health and wellness and all those kinds of things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Behave is a much longer, thicker, I mean, that thing is huge. Got it on audiobook, terrible choice. It's so dry. I wanted it on audiobook once I bought the book because I ride my bike every day, and I was like, I'll just knock out 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Not that book when they're talking about neurological processes and
yeah.
RNA and mRNA. Like, I want to see it, so, yeah.
Are there pictures?
But I mean, they're very, rudimentary, sketches. It's not a picture book, though, Mark.
Dang it! That's the only thing I read, just Dr. Seuss all the time. Alright, so we'll move on to the last question because you did just kind of tease it there for a second. I think people are wondering what we're going to talk about now. So I'll set it up real quick. Last week we finished by talking about the benefit of doing long, sustainable work, how much we should be doing it, and by definition, how much intensity work we should be doing. And that's when you kind of dropped the bomb and you were like, for the 99.9% of people that aren't competing in elite functional fitness, never. We shouldn't ever be doing highly intense work.
Yep.
I almost said intentional. Your work should always be intentional, but highly intense work. So the question this week is, I want to do high intensity work. Like, it's something I want to do. Like, it's just something I like doing.
Cool.
How can I get there if I'm always doing this long, sustainable work? If I'm always going slow, how can I get to doing the high intensity work? How can I earn it?
you
did I
just
steal it?
I didn't
answer. I didn't even read that. I'm sorry.
No, that's that. Like that. You literally. That's. I think that's hysterical because you just answered your own question.
I promise I didn't read that.
No, that's fine. But no, legit. I think it's so funny that you use that language because that is exactly it. You have to earn it. Okay. And I thought about this at length. I usually don't do this after we podcast. Like go back and think about things. I mean, I do. That sounds so wrong. I do. But what I mean is I know that there were some pieces that I was missing, and I kind of got thrown last week when the camera went out. I do have it plugged in today, and I lost my train of thought trying to get that back up and running. So I left some really important pieces out, and I'm never trying to be deliberately like polarizing or to say something that's clickbait and never do intense work and that's not what it was about. Because like with everything, there is so much nuance. But I do still put my stake in the ground that 99.9% of people don't need to even concern themselves with it or worry about it. Because it's not truly in service of the goals that they have set for themselves. Now, inevitably, when people get involved in, let's just say functional fitness or CrossFit or whatever, they get into or they get dosed with a little bit of high intensity work, and they get this endorphin dopamine hit, and it's like, oh man, that was good, like I want to do it. And we do need, maybe we can make a note about this and is go back and talk about the downside effects of the dopamine hit and what that does and addiction and all the negative effects anyways. But let's just say we've talked to the coach and we've established all these goals and we're doing all these things, and it's hey, I want to be able to do some of this high intensity work. How do I get there? And the short answer is you earn it. You earn your right to do that thing. And in this day and age, saying something like that can come off as so, well, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? And how dare you say what I'm capable of doing? Well, number one, I've been doing this a lot longer than anybody that is going to come to me with that argument. Mm-hmm. So, and this is not me being arrogant, this is me being a professional. It's like, you're going to lose that argument. It's like if I go to a lawyer and I say, like, oh, I'm going to do this, and he's like, well, no, you're not, because he's the professional. Like, I'm not. No matter how many movies about law or books about law that I've written, like, I'm paying him to be the professional.
Right. You have time in the trenches. You have the wisdom. Exactly.
Like, and I've experienced it myself, you know, what that means. And let's just remove the health and fitness or the I can do whatever I want, like, narrative from it. And let's just go to, I know you're not a parent, but I like to relate things to driving, is I have a kid. I have an 8-year-old son. And he comes of age and says, all right, I got the keys to the car, I'm going to go driving. Now, removing the safety aspect from it, or the legality of it, he is not ready to go out on the road until he has earned the right and proven himself capable of doing that thing. I think we can all agree on that.
It's not just because he's 16.
Right. Or because he thinks that he, you know, should have the right to do whatever he wants, and we're removing the legality aspect. No, I should be able to go and drive and do whatever I want. It's like, well, you haven't earned the right. So this is no different. So let's bring it back into the health and fitness perspective. And let's just say it's not intensity. It's, I want to learn, or I want to go and run a half marathon. Great. You need to earn the right to do that. You need to be set up mechanically. You need to be set up physiologically to actually go through and do that and not just suffer through it. Because that's not the goal. That's not what you want to do it for.
Right.
Same thing with a muscle up. I saw Mark doing that thing you posted yesterday on your Instagram video. I want to do a muscle up. Great. Like, you have to earn your ability to do that. And what we really mean by earn is you need to be able to express it in such a way that you can recover and adapt and come back and do it again.
Right.
Do it again in 2 minutes, like we did with that workout today. Do it again in 2 hours. Do it again the next day. Do it again in 2 weeks. So those are all the pieces, and the coach is the one that helps you determine how you earn the right or the ability to do that thing.
And it takes time. I mean, and I think that's really, really hard to get across. And it's something you and I have been talking about extensively over the last couple of weeks, is this idea that progress should be long and sustainable. And if you got all your progress, like if you woke up tomorrow with all of your goals reached and everything, you'd be like, what do I do? You'd probably have some sort of identity crisis, and that goes into some sort of long conversation about goals and how it takes time and what happens to your goals when you reach them that we discussed. But you brought up my muscle up video, and I posted a video of almost 6 years ago when the night I did my first one. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And then I posted kind of a video of, you know, it was a ton of time between, 6 years between the first video and the second one, of me doing 4.
Right.
And now some would say, like, now 4 is not my max effort set, the most that I can do, but some would say, man, like, it's only 4 after 6 years, and it's like, dang right, like, I can do 4 at the end, and I told you it was at the end of a workout.
Right.
So I earned the right to, okay, like, I'm very fatigued, like, I'm going to hop onto the bar and do 4 muscle-ups, whereas before it was fresh doing 1, and that's 6 years. Like, if somebody came in, and I was actually talking to a member about this morning, if we had on the door CFG, the place where you lose 50 pounds across 5 years, it's like, how many people do you think would come in the door?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, that slow and steady, I hear my dad used to always beat this into my head, and it's so funny, it's come full circle. It's, he always used to say, slow and steady wins the race. And I'm like, give me a fast car. Like, that's going to win the race. But when you get older, you get wiser, you have kids, you run a business, you mentor, lead, and all these things. Like, Warren Buffett didn't become one of the richest guys in the world, in a year or 10 or 20. It's like 50 years.
Yeah.
You ever seen the picture of Bezos in the early 90s in his original office? Like, he had a paper banner with Amazon spray painted on it.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, he's so rich and lucky. Like, the guy's been at it for 40 years.
Yeah.
40-something years. Like, it takes time. He's earned the right to be where he is.
It's like people think that just because he was brought into the limelight, I would say in the last 5 years, he's blown up in a fame sense.
Yeah.
Now, he's been rich long before that because people have been using Amazon and Amazon Prime for 5+ years. But, I mean, just because he's been in the limelight for the last 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, like, oh man, he was an overnight trillionaire. It's like, no, this dude's been working hard long before you even knew who he was.
There's a famous video I go and watch a couple times a year just to keep me humble, but it's basically the gist of the video is every overnight success takes at least 10 years.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a long time, but taking it back to the high intensity piece, it's a sensitive subject because it's like, well, I want to work really hard, or why can't I just do this faster and do it? Because it goes back to what I said. If you do that and you haven't earned the right, you haven't built the structure, the foundational support to be able to recover and adapt from it, you're gonna break. I guarantee you're gonna break somehow, some way. I've seen it happen over and over, all over the place. And don't give me you're not being coached right or something. Like, I'm telling you, if you chase that over and over, something's going to happen. So, what does that mean when we say earn it? Is you need to do it in a progressive way and in a sense where you can express what you want to do in an aerobic setting. I'll give you a great example of this. The first time that I got involved in CrossFit was 2007 or 6 or something. It's been a long time. I remember at that time I had already done all the Olympic lifts. I had done gymnastics for a long time. I had done sprinting and all kinds of agility work. So I had done all the different modalities within the sport, but never combined. So the first CrossFit gym that I went to, I remember my goal very vividly is I just want to learn to do a muscle up. That's the one thing I couldn't do, And I see all these people, they're doing them, and I could do pull-ups, and I had the strength to do this and to do that. I was like, just let me get up there, let me try it. What's the technique that I need to know? Because I just couldn't figure it out on my own. And I remember my coach saying, here's how you grip the rings, show me that you can false grip. And I think I've detailed this before, but it's it was the 6-month process of here's how to hold the rings, here's how to swing in the hollow, here's how to practice the turnover. Before I ever got to do my first one, it was pissing me off because these workouts would come up and these people, friends of mine, not just random people, friends of mine would be doing these things in the workout, and what my coach kept preaching to me was, you need to have patience because there will come a time. And this is when I had more of the athlete competitive mindset. There will come a time, because they're not working on the basics. They're just surviving, when you will just run circles around them. And it was probably a year and a half, 2 years in. But fast forward, so that was 2007. So that was 13 years ago. Yesterday we did a workout that had some shoulder to overhead, and then I opted the upper body pulling that I did was bar muscle ups. And it was 10 rounds for time, and that to me, because of the upper body push at the top of the muscle up, and those are what we would consider interfering, type movements, right? So there's a fatigue movement to movement standpoint, and then there's also just cardio fatigue that you get. But every single round I would do my 10 shoulder overhead, walk right up, jump up, do 2 bar muscle ups, and go. So it was an ability that I was expressing aerobically, because I could have kept going for another 10 rounds and done 20 rounds and 40 total muscle ups and would have been fine. Like, there was never an issue of getting there. But like, that's a 13-year journey that I earned over time,
right,
because there was a logical progression. And it's not a popular answer, but that is really how it happens.
So what if somebody doesn't care as much about muscle ups as you did or do, and it's something like today where it's, hey, I want to just be able to, I want to burpee fast and I want to deadlift fast, like, and I like the feeling afterwards, feeling smoked. Like, how do I earn the right to go fast on burpees and deadlifts?
Earn it by understanding the principles of pace and sustainability. And how do you do that? You come in and you talk to your coach, and today we outlined it very, very well, or you did, outlined it very, very well, that we've got 2 8-minute pieces of work that are designed to be identical. And so if you're wondering, like, this is a really good test for people, is, do you have the governor inside of you, the self-awareness, that says in the first 3 minutes of the first 8-minute piece, like, ooh, I'm going too fast, I need to throttle back, because I know that I'm not just having to, suffer through the next 5 minutes. I've actually got to get through this, rest 2, and repeat another 8-minute segment with the goal of doing it the same. So your mindset needs to change around what that is. So how do you eventually get to that point? So just taking this a little bit further, so we say you have to earn it and express it aerobically. So you actually start at the far end to learn about yourself. And what I mean is the long duration stuff. Learn how to pace, in a 50-minute piece, 40, 30, 20, 2 8-minute pieces, then a 7-minute piece, then a 6-minute piece. And see, okay, with a 4-minute piece and I get 5 minutes rest after it, can I repeat the same amount of work?
Right.
That's truly where you are expressing it, recovering, and adapting from it.
Cool.
So I hope that clarified it a little bit. It's not like a black and white never. I still hold that for most people, it's not so much that it's never, it's that it's so far off, and it's such a detour to what your goals truly are, that you don't even need to concern yourself with it. But if you do, you need to know that you have to put in time to earn it. How do you do that? You work on getting really good at your ability to adapt and recover. How do you do that? You get really good aerobically.
And you talk to a coach about how to do that.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
So if there's anything else that I missed, or that people have questions on or follow up, or let me know.
I guarantee there will be, because there's going to be a lot of questions about it.
Cool. Yeah, any of these. These are all really, really good. Very tactical type things today. And this is why we were talking at our staff meeting on this past Saturday when we all got together, is the move through all this. What we are learning is that the answer, it depends, means that, in another way to think of it is, it's personalized to each person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's not some, like, just general program template. They sell those online for $20.
Yeah, and that's why the answers to these questions, it's not like, oh, how to identify stress? Stop talking to that idiot. Is coffee good? Yep, that's not bad. Like, those are general, and it needs to be specific. So I can get into the nuance as deeply as I can, without having that person in front of me. But I also know who asks these questions, so I can kind of personalize it without saying the name.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to the live feed. We did have a few viewers today, so thank you. If you listened to this episode at all, thank you. So like any of the questions with the chapter markers or the whole thing, this was episode number 57 of The Art of Coaching. We're just going to title this one Coffee, Resolutions, Injury Advice, Stress Lesson, and Intense Work. Boom.